Hello everyone, I'm Brandon Ordoñez from ECE41 and today I will be performing our summative assessment number 1 for our Internet of Things laboratory. Hello everyone, so now let us proceed with our summative assessment 1 for the final period of our Internet of Things laboratory. So for the instruction is program the Raspberry Pi to carry out the task being asked as shown below. Submit the code using Python or Node-RED programming. Once PB1 is pressed, sequence 1 will commence and runs for 10 seconds. Then it proceeds to sequence 2 for 5 seconds and loops back again to sequence 1. Hence, it repeats the process. So for the circuit, we'll be using 8 LEDs as shown in this diagram and the push button. So the 8 LEDs would follow sequence 1 and sequence 2 in a loop. So now let us head to freezing for the circuit assembly. Okay, so this is the push button which is connected at GPIO2 and to the ground. Next, the ground port of our Raspberry Pi 4 is connected to the ground terminal of our breadboard. Next, our LEDs are also connected to the ground with their respective 220 ohm resistors. Now, let's head to the distribution of the GPIO pins for the LEDs. So, LED 1 is connected to GPIO 5, LED 2 is connected to GPIO 6, LED 3 is connected to GPIO 13, LED 4 is connected to GPIO 19, LED 5 is connected to GPIO 26, LED 6 is connected to GPIO 16, LED 7 is connected to GPIO 20, and LED 8 is connected to GPIO 21. So after the circuit assembly, let us head to our code. So this would be the actual circuit assembly for this experiment, and this would be our code. So for the Python code, import RPI GPIO as GPIO. This is for the GPIO distribution, and this would be for the delay from time import sleep. So this part is for the initial setup of our GPIO pins. It says that GPIO2 would be for our push button, which is an input. GPIOs 5, 6, 13, 19, 26, 16, 20, and 21 are all GPIO outputs. And we establish the variable count as equal to 0. So same here. This states the output for our GPIO pins, which is for the LEDs. So a message would appear saying that in the Thorny Python, in our Raspberry Pi, a message would say that press the push button to start LED sequence loop. So while true, this would be the main loop for this code. If GPIO2 is equal to false, sleep 0.5, count plus or equal to 1, print count. So this is whenever whenever the push button is not pressed. And if the push button is pressed, count would be equal to 1 here. So if count is equal to 1, the main loop would be as follows. While count is equal to 1, this would be for the first sequence of our program. This part shows that GPIO 5 or LED 1 would be on for 1.25 seconds. Next, this would after 1.25 seconds, LED 1 would turn off and LED 2 would turn on, and after 1.25 seconds, LED 2 would turn off and LED 3 would turn on, and after 1.25 seconds, LED 3 would turn off and LED 4 would turn on. After 1.25 seconds, LED 4 would turn off and LED 5 would turn on. After 1.25 seconds, LED 6 would turn on and LED 5 would turn off. After 1.25 seconds, LED 6 would turn off and LED 7 would turn on. And lastly, for another 1.25 seconds, LED 8 would turn on and LED 7 would turn off. So that is it for the first sequence of our program. Next, for the second sequence of our program, initially GPIO 21 or LED 8 is on for 0.625 seconds. And afterwards, LED 8 would turn off and LED 7 would turn on for 0.625 seconds. Next, LED 7 would turn off and LED 6 would turn on for another 0.625 seconds. LED 6 would turn off and LED 5 would turn on for 0.625 seconds. LED 5 would turn off and LED 4 would turn on for 0.625 seconds. After that, LED 4 would turn off and LED 3 would turn on for 0.625 seconds. LED 3 would turn off and LED 2 would turn on for 0.625 seconds. Next, LED 2 would turn off and LED 1 would turn on for 0.625 seconds. And after 0.625 seconds, LED 1 would turn off for 1 second and the cycle repeats with our sequence 1. So after discussing the program, I will click run in our Thorny Python in our Raspberry Pi 4 and this would be the result for this summative assessment 1.
Hello everyone, so now this would be our circuit for this experiment. So upon clicking the button, the push button, it is expected that two sequences would show, wherein the first sequence would take 10 seconds and the second sequence would take 5 seconds. And after the second sequence is done, the first sequence would repeat again, and after that the second sequence, and the loop will just continually flow. So now let us try pressing the button here. So this would be our first sequence. The lights will be moving to the right. So while one light is on, the other before it is off, and it will take 10 seconds. And this is our second sequence, wherein the light would move to the left. So again, let us observe. The first sequence is expected to take 10 seconds, while the second sequence is expected to run for 5 seconds. So that is it for our summative assessment in the Internet of Things, wherein we made a light sequence using our Raspberry Pi 4.